Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie discussion in the multiverse. I am your host, Adam Portrais, and I'm joined by Sean Keenan.
Heidi said yes.
And, of course, Bruce Leslie.
I'm a prickly pear, and Heidi, it's not too late to turn back.
Let me tell you, kids, we are not turning back. We hope you didn't turn back from watching The Punisher on Netflix, because this episode we are talking about the first 6 episodes, and man, oh man, there's been some controversial things online, and I'm sure we'll talk about some of them, because some people I think really get this show, and others I think may not really get kind of what's going on here, but we're going to cover all of that here on HMP, because you know what? That's what we do around here, doggone it. That's what we do. And we do what we do because of the people that help support this program over at patreon.com/HMP. All 37 of you, thank you so much for keeping this program going. And we're going to talk about one of the benefits that you get from being a member of patreon.com/HMP at the end of the program. And we're coming around to the beginning of next month. And let me tell you, you guys are going to want to be on board for December because we got a couple of new interesting things for you there. So get on that patreon.com/HMP. Oh man, I think we're going to have a whole heck of a lot to cover here, so I am just going to jump right on into it here. Let's go ahead and listen to the trailer for Marvel's The Punisher.
Gentlemen, I'm the only authority you will need. I point, you shoot. Did you kill the target?
What did you see? Things over there were different. What we were doing was wrong. You did what you were supposed to do, right?
Now the only person you're punishing is yourself.
Frank Castle?
I got something I need to show you.
I still have the video files.
The U.S. military turned you into a hitman, Frank.
I'm looking for Frank Castle.
The Punisher?
I think you know about my case.
Castle's the last witness. We can either clean this up or let them take us down.
They killed my family to get to me. You have nothing but a war inside you. You're gonna pay. Stay out of my way. This is not your fight. I need to find these bastards and I gotta kill them.
So where does that end, Frank? What if you're exposed them?
These men, they decide what the truth is.
The same thing that happened to you happened to me. We could make that right. The world needs to see the truth.
Alrighty, that was the trailer for The Punisher. First 6 episodes here. IMDb plot line. After the murder of his family, Marine veteran Frank Castle becomes a vigilante known as The Punisher with only one goal in mind: to avenge them. Starring John Barenthal, Amber Rose Reva, Eben Moss Bachrach? Sure. Ben Barnes and many more. Well, we've covered The Punisher on this show a couple of times from a couple different angles. So we really have to only ask ourselves one important question here.
It's time for Bruce's comic book connection.
Bruce, I know we got a lot to go through here, so I want to see what you chose because I'm curious.
Well, the nice thing is I get to divide it into 2 for this one. Mm-hmm. So The Punisher first sprang to life on the pages of Amazing Spider-Man in 1974. But for 13 years, he was pretty much a loner. He didn't have a Happy Hogan or a Rick Jones or even a dead Bucky to come back to life at a future date. Poor Frank Castle, destined to be forever alone. That is until November 1987, when Mike Baron and Klaus Janson created David Microchip Lieberman. His middle name is Linus for the trivia buffs out there. He was a legendary computer hacker in the early days of the hacking business, performing numerous scams and hacks still held in awe today, until one scam brought him too close to real-world criminals, forcing him to go into retirement as a quiet, unassuming businessman. This ended when his nephew, attempting to follow in his favorite uncle's footsteps, was caught and killed after accidentally hacking into the private computers of Kingpin. While investigating his nephew's murder, Lieberman met and started collaborating with the Punisher. He served not just as a hacker and a cyber investigator. Micro also helped Castle manage and launder his finances, set up and equip safe houses, and obtain hard-to-get ammunition and equipment. He also acted as a confidant for Frank, encouraging him to take a personal day every once in a while, maybe try some online dating. Now, as Microchip became more of a fixture in the comics, we started to learn a little bit about his own tragic backstory. His father had been forced to create weapons against his will well before Microchip was born, and he also has an illegitimate son named Louis Frohike. Perhaps most tragically, he has always considered his weight a problem, and you must remember he was portrayed by Wayne Knight at one point. Now, this probably led Wayne Knight to be typecast as a hacker, but it also led Microchip to sign himself into a fat camp. Though it goes unexpectedly, as it turns out the administrators are dealing speed. Seriously, folks, there's a Microchip Goes to Fat Camp issue of The Punisher. Now, when Punisher Warzone launched in 1992, Micro goes so far as to see a psychiatrist and take up acting in theater as part of his therapy. Once again, seriously, folks, there's a Micro Takes Acting Lessons issue of Punisher Warzone. It kind of sounds like Always Sunny in Philadelphia episodes. The one where Micro goes to fat camp. The one where Micro takes acting lessons. Well, after Frank Castle discovers this, the two have a disagreement and Microchip goes into hiding, working as a barman. Ultimately, Castle and Micro have one final fallout just before the cancellation of all three major Punisher titles in 1995. This fight comes to an end in the closing issues of the Punisher War Journal. Micro disagrees with Frank Castle's methods, feeling that Frank has lost sight of their original goals and has gone over the edge. Soon after, Micro then tries to replace Castle with a new hand-picked Punisher, a former Navy SEAL known as Carlos Cruz. Micro and Castle come face-to-face in one of Micro's safe houses in what appears to be a final confrontation. A gun battle ensues between the two former partners. This battle is interrupted by a rogue SHIELD agent named Derek Stone Cold Smalls, who had been part of a program to take down vigilante groups, but had himself become a vigilante. Smalls fires a rocket into the safe house. It explodes, and Microchip dies. Castle moves on, unsure if he would really have slain Microchip himself if it came to it, until a character known as the Hood brings Microchip back from the dead and also offers to bring his son back to life if he helps him deal with the Punisher. It doesn't really go well, and Punisher's deceased family come back as zombies. So that's unfortunate. Well, Microchip dies again when Jigsaw kidnaps him and allows the Punisher to slit his throat. Does it sound like I left a few dots unconnected there? Well, that's because the comics did the same thing. But as it stands, Microchip has passed on to the Great Onion website in the sky because isn't that what hackers do, Adam? Use their bitcoins on onions or something?
Yep, you all just go straight to that, or Dogecoins if you want to use those. Those are helpful as well, and they're a little bit more cute if we're honest with ourselves.
Hey, I'm fond of the Bitcoin.
Bitcoin. It's the greatest. It's the greatest currency of all time. Steve Jobs himself couldn't come up with better currency. Now, so we came to Frank Castle the first time being on the Daredevil Season 2, I think of which we all like. Sean Keenan just went out into a highway, I guess. I don't know what happened there. And, Sean, you were, I think, of all three of us, you were probably the least of the Punisher as a character fans amongst us. And the Daredevil kind of switched you around from that, yeah?
Yeah,
at least
you're
as
right.
far as this goes.
I always liked the Punisher, but I like him as a side dish.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't think that he should ever have his own comic book. He's just not interesting enough. He's more of a force of nature than anything else. But Daredevil kind of changed that. You know, they made him a lot deeper than he is in the comics, even now. Even when Garth Ennis had him, like took over the reins, you know, he has a whole lot more to do now, at least in this incarnation, the Netflix Punisher. And so I wasn't really looking forward to the Netflix Punisher because, as I've said to you guys before, you know, he's a great character, but he's a great character in someone else's book. And so I thought it was a mistake to make him give him his own series on Netflix. But I like this series. I think he's great, and I like the characterization of him in this. I don't even like that actor that much, but I think he's great as Frank. He's a really good Frank. What do you guys think?
Well, I didn't like John Barenthal mainly because I only knew him as Shane from The Walking Dead. I didn't really know him very well from anything else. And I think it was just because I didn't like Shane. I thought I didn't like the actor. But no, I think he makes a great Frank. I mean, first of all, you can't fake that haggard face he has with all the harsh angles and everything, the crooked nose, the angular cheekbones and everything. I mean, he definitely looks like a rough drawing of Frank Castle in profile. So I think that's very good.
Through the meat grinder.
Yeah. But I think after watching Daredevil, I probably disagreed with Sean. I thought that the Punisher would be a great character to have his own series. I thought maybe he didn't work as good in the movies because he needed a longer treatment. But after seeing this, I want to go back on that. I think I agree with Sean's original sentiment that maybe he didn't need his own show.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into it. More of it will come when we do the second half. But there were some things that I just didn't enjoy as much. And by nature of the character, I understand that it's not going to feel very much like a comic book property, but I don't know. I felt like I felt like other than the character's name being Frank Castle, this was more like a First Blood television series than a Punisher television series.
Which I'm totally fine with because I love First Blood. You know, I think that the character of Rambo in First Blood is great. It's a great character. Anything outside of that first one is awful, but the first one is great.
And you know, I love the movie First Blood, but when it comes to Punisher should be more like the sequels and less like First Blood in my warped mind.
See, and I think you're going strictly, and you correct me if I'm wrong in this assumption, that you're going for more of the comic book world of it, which is what I think Sean is kind of going against, which is the kind of like, hey, I've got all this stuff. Like, was your biggest Punisher fan? Were you digging it the most when he had the van and all that crap?
Yeah.
See, that makes more sense to me.
I think it makes sense that Sean and I mean, we saw it from a different point of view back during season 2 of Daredevil, and we still see it from a different point of view now. At least we're consistent. See,
I liked it when Ennis and he especially like he said so specifically in the book is like, hey, I'm getting rid of all the fancy crazy crap that I used to have and all that stuff. There's no big sort of warehouse. There's no crazed vehicles or anything. It's just a man on a mission.
But I mean, Garth Ennis's The Resurrection of Ma Nucci is probably one of my all-time favorite Punisher storylines from Marvel Knights. But it still has more comic book feel, even with the gritty Garth Ennis stuff, than what this show has. To me, just to me, it just seems to be lacking just a little something that gives it that escapism feel that I like when I'm even reading the Garth Ennis version of Punisher.
Well, I feel it needs to, like, I kind of like how it's staying in this regular sort of thing, and we don't have, at least as far as this one goes, switch, a lot of like crossover with the regular Marvel verse that we've already gotten in Netflix here, and keeping it more in that realistic thing, because that was what was so great about Daredevil specifically, is that they kept it very kind of like, hey, this is real world sort of stuff. There's comic booky kinds of stuff in this real world. And they kind of kept going through that until we get to, Iron Fist, where we go a little bit above and beyond, a little bit more mystical, a little bit more far-fetched and tough to believe. But this also kind of brings that back a little bit and keeps us down at that like more realistic New York level, as opposed to the, crazy absurdist Avenger level, if you will.
But even like the blind lawyer superhero that was trained by a blind ninja, it still has that comic book throwback kung fu movie feel. I mean, it has those Frank Miller touches that still feels enough like escapism. Too often with Punisher, I'm not feeling any kind of escape from reality.
You know, it's funny, man. I'm glad that you guys brought up Iron Fist because, you know, we had a batch here of pretty subpar Netflix stuff. You know, I think it started with the second half of Luke Cage, where that first half of Luke Cage is awesome, but then it gets in the second half and that's not so great. Then that flips over to Iron Fist, and Iron Fist is just awful from beginning to end. And then it goes to Defenders, and Defenders is good when it's good, but it's bad when it's bad. And this is, and so I was really kind of getting a malaise with the Netflix stuff until this. And you know, I've told you guys this off air before. I watched this thing all the way through in one sitting, one day. I can't even possibly imagine watching Iron Fist in one sitting. You know, and it's different. I mean, you know, it's still got that same Netflix Marvel feel where New York is ugly, and you know, there's a lot of awful happening around our characters, but it's also different enough to where it's like, oh, here's the hallway fight. Oh, here's the part where the big flip happens, where there's going to be a different bad guy that we didn't even see coming. Like, you know, there was none of that in this, and I really like the pacing of this. I like the acting in this. And, you know, talking about Barenthal always plays a screaming, like spewing bile
psychopath type
character. Yeah. Or, I mean, he's either a psychopath or he's just awful.
Yeah.
You know, and and that's all he plays. And in this one, he has a lot more dimension than that. And that's why I think he works so well. And, you know, my fiance, Lindsay, actually had said to me watching this, she was like, what was he before? Was he a boxer? Was he a boxer?
He just got that messed up face.
Yeah, because his face is so messed up. It does look like he was a boxer at one point.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I mean, while we're talking here, I'm just flipping through the Garth Ennis, Steve Dillon hardcover that I've got for Punisher. And I'm telling you, man, that Steve Dillon profile has all the same crags in it that Barenthal's has.
Yeah. And by the way, was anyone surprised at all when that Welcome Back Frank is name checked in the first episode of the show?
I thought it was great.
Yeah, even though none of the storyline is there, and also the Nucci crime family gets brought up in the first episode, and I'm really excited because, as I've said before, I really like the Nucci crime family as foils for Frank, and I thought that something along the lines of the resurrection of Mon Nucci was coming, but then that just disappears like by episode 2 almost.
I think that's fine because let's be honest, I mean, like Thomas Jane's Punisher movie had elements of that in there, and we don't want to revisit that, let's be honest.
Well, Ray Stevenson's was probably a little better, but wasn't that the one that had Jigsaw?
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
That there's no Looney Bin Jim in this show, which I could have gone for something like that. Like I could have gone for just a little bit of a comic book element.
But I mean, that isn't what this show is. You know, like this show is so boots on the ground. Like this is something that could have happened. Like they're not going to have a lot of elements like that, at least not right away. Which tells me, I'm sorry, go ahead, Bruce.
And I was also just going to add, like flipping through this Garth Ennis book here, trying to figure out why it is that I really love this run in the comic, but the show turned me off a little bit. And I guess the biggest part is Garth Ennis's violence is over the top. Like there's no realism to it. Like I'm seeing this whole building explode while Frank walks away. I'm seeing like charred skeletons on the ground while the cops go, yep, typical Punisher. And I also am seeing Frank dish out all kinds of punishment, as his name would imply, but there's no extended scenes of Frank being tortured and punished.
Well, I mean, to a degree, but man, I'll say this, and this goes for the second season of Daredevil plus this season. Has there ever been a character that you can remember in movie history who's taken a beating after beating after beating more than this character has?
Heck
Holy
no, man.
cow.
Not even close.
I've never seen anyone just get demolished like Frank Castle does in this Netflix.
At least nobody that doesn't have some kind of healing factor or something.
Exactly.
I mean,
he's just a dude. It's amazing. I'm just like, I don't know how like there are pieces of him that are still holding together.
There is a whole element of first act of Kick-Ass in this whole show for sure.
Yeah, and there, and I guess what I'm saying, there's not enough fantastic escapism because, believe me, man, the world's a crummy enough place. When I dive into the speculative fiction that I like so much, like comic books, etc., a big part of that is the escapism, and there's not much of that here. Except you could say that no real person would still be alive by the end of this show.
Bruce is like, I just want to see Frank on a hang glider. What's wrong with that?
Man, I would love it with a big hang glider with the skull painted on it while he's hang gliding to do his patented hang glider bazooka attack. I would love that.
That sounds like it's right up your alley. It makes more sense that way.
And also, I mean, right in episode 1, I'm a little miffed because we're not even 15 minutes into the episode and he's burning the vest with the skull painted on it. You know, because they strung us out through Daredevil season 1 before Matt Murdock finally put on the costume in the last episode. And then they strung us out in season 2. Frank didn't get the skull on his Kevlar until like near the end of the season. And then they're going to go back to that again and have him burn it at the beginning just so we have to sit through a whole season until he puts it on again at the end. You know, I say I'm watching this because I like the Punisher in the comics. Just let him keep the skull. How hard would that have been?
I think that you would probably like to see the white gloves and boots also.
You know, they had their day.
Yep, I knew it. I knew it would happen, and the belt makes the little teeth down there for the skull and everything. We know what you like.
Oh, that'd be awesome. That would be awesome.
We know what you like.
Come on, man. You guys would have pumped your fist a little bit if in the final episode he just out of nowhere put on the 1974 Punisher costume.
Some big old white gloves and boots, honestly, I probably would have freaked out. It would have been so corny and so silly, but yeah, there's a small part of like young Adam that would just be like, awesome.
And he just would have said, okay, I'm off to kill Spider-Man.
Oh, dude, come on. You guys know, and Barenthal's been hanging out with what's-his-face there, so, you know, the Punisher and Spider-Man have already met.
Tobey Maguire?
Yes, Tobey Maguire. No, the new kid?
Nick Hammond?
I hate your guts so much.
Tom Holland.
Jeez.
I would like to see John Barenthal and Nicholas Hammond in a movie together.
Who would?
Yeah, me too. I would like to see if that suit still fits him.
Oh man, Punisher needs a sidekick other than Microchip. What do you think about Microchip? How about we go on into that for a minute? Because that was the big tease in Daredevil season 2, is he had that compact disc, that CD-ROM that said Micro on it, and that was our tease to let us know Microchip was coming and he'd have a partner. What did you think? This guy, you said his last name was Bacharach. Is that right?
Yeah, Burt Bacharach.
Adam?
He's Burt Bacharach's son. I'm making that up, but that's what I'm
wondered if there's a connection there.
That's what I'm going with here. Son of Burt Bacharach.
The greatest songwriter of his time, Burt Bacharach.
Indeed. What the world needs now, my friends. No, I don't think so.
But I did like this Micro. A little bit different from what I was expecting. You know, the long hair, the shaggy beard, the guy that's literally been underground for a year and hasn't had a haircut or a shave, and he's slender, not quite Wayne Newman Knight, but I can get behind it.
I want more naked Wayne Newman in my life. Can we make it happen, please?
Of course, in my head canon, you see, Newman escaped from Jurassic Park and went on to become Micro.
I really like this character of Micro, and I like that they call him Micro and not Microchip, and I like that, and I like that, you know, you see how resourceful he is on his own. You know, because that's one of the things that I think that the comic books don't really show you very much. You know, in the comic books, he's more of like an oracle kind of a character where, I really kind of can't do this on my own, but I can feed you information. Whereas in this show, they do a very good job of not only showing you that he can do this on his own, but he is a positive boon to Frank. You know, when he throws when he throws that drone up in the air, it was like, oh, that's a really clever use of that guy. You know, his skill set.
And
I liked it.
Yeah, I liked it a lot too, man. I like the actor. I think he did a good job. He definitely has a Serpico kind of feel about him, though. I don't know how to put that into words, but it's a different take on the character Micro, and it works. And introducing the family and that whole weird dynamic of Pete Castiglione, spending time with Micro's family while Micro's watching on the cameras and can't do anything about it. I thought that was a nice dynamic. When Karen Page shows up, man, I thought that was nice and fresh. That's really the only thing that ties this with anything else in the Marvel universe. None of the other. This is the first time we don't get a Claire Temple cameo,
which I'm okay with. I think that that's run its course at this point. We already have the big Defenders show.
Yeah.
Let's start something new, and having this be, what would you call this, phase 2 of Marvel Netflix?
I think so, man. I think so. But there was a moment, when Micro is taken, it's like episode 5 and 6 when Frank's hurt pretty bad and Micro takes him to his buddy Curtis to get fixed up, where just for a moment I thought, okay, so here's where we're going to get the out of the blue. Karen Page is going to bring Claire Temple to patch him up, but that didn't happen.
I was glad for that. I think that she's great for the through line for the first phase. Let's do something else for the second one.
Mm-hmm.
And I also like it that it's something for Karen Page to do. I like that actress a lot. I think she does a great job. I think Karen has become a character that deserves her own light to be shined on her in the Netflix series. I think she's a much more positive character than she is in the comics. Unfortunately, there's not a real good place for her in Daredevil because the whole romance between Karen and Matt is probably never going to go down. So having her have this unexpected closeness, this compassionate closeness with Frank Castle is really sweet here. I liked it.
Yeah, me too. And she is. There's something about that actress that when she's on screen, you're like, oh hey. It's not like whenever you see what's the scumbag that's in all the Netflix shows, the drug dealer and
Turk.
Turk.
Yeah.
When Turk is in it, it's just like yeah, okay, there's Turk.
That guy.
Yeah. Turk, has to get beat up in every Netflix show. That's like the rule, and it's kind of fun.
Why are you beating me?
But I almost forgot that Turk was in this until Sean said something. That's how little impact his appearance had on me compared to Karen's.
And that's what I mean, is that he is that low level of of a character, or maybe it's the actor himself. I don't know, but he doesn't add anything by bringing him in again.
The thing is with that guy is like he's got one of those faces that you're kind of like, I know him, and you like he's just not something. Maybe it's how they've written him or something to where he just doesn't have quite that presence that you certainly remember that character at any time. Give him a big bolo tie or something. Make me,
Yeah, he's definitely no Mahershala Ali, man. That guy, he became my favorite actor overnight when I saw Luke Cage.
Man, you're not kidding.
That guy had such a killer year.
So what are your guys' take? In particular, yours, Sean. I'm curious to hear what you have to say about this Homeland Security agent, a totally new character introduced for the first time in the show. She's not from the comics, not from any of the previous Netflix show. This Dinah Madani.
I like the character. The actress herself, I there's something off with her. I like the idea of that character. It also would make sense that she's not just some beat cop, which I thought they did a good job with that. And I for some reason I was expecting to see like a detective soap type character. I'm glad we didn't see anything like that. She's a good character. I would have liked to have seen a stronger actress play that role.
Because one thing, now I'm not going to talk so much about her acting abilities, but just as far as the look that they captured when they cast her, like a little bit of it is casting her, some of it's wardrobe, some of it's hair. But before she even opens her mouth and says a word, as soon as I see her on screen, I know everything about this character. And it's very rare that something just seems to be so believable. Like even before she begins acting, just seeing her like the way that she's it's like she's hot, but she like gives herself that kind of not great haircut because she's working in this traditionally male role where she feels like she has to ugly herself up a little bit. The stern look on her face because she's tired of all the crap she has to put up with. And I mean, just before she even says a word, I feel like I know a big part of her story.
Yeah, I agree. But she has to be twice as tough because she's in a field where blah, 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 blah. The character that I love is I love that C. Thomas Howell is in this movie, TV show.
Almost every show is either made immensely better or immensely worse with C. Thomas Howell. Nothing stays exactly the same when he shows up.
Totally agree. And he's got this weird secondary career now where if he shows up, you pretty much know that he's going to be a dirtbag. Like, it's just what happens with him now. And it's because of the way that he's aged, where he looks sort of like pumpkin-y almost, you know, like
his forehead kept growing and the rest of him didn't or something.
Right, exactly. And you know, like putting a goatee, slapping a goatee on him, like it just looks weird on his head, and it's pretty perfect. And so when you first see him, you're like, oh, this guy is a bad guy, clearly, and there was something nice about having him there, you know. And it's one of those things where it's like, this guy has come so far in his career that now when I see him, he isn't like a secondary, like, oh, you guys couldn't get Ralph Macchio, you know, like now he's like his own dude, and and having him in this was just awesome.
I like that, man. I like that. I do want to go back to Madani a little bit because, in particular, I want your take on this, Sean. But has her character gotten to be sort of like a archetype character, kind of a tropish character? Like, I never watched Homeland. I know you worked on that. I feel like since the world changed about 16 years ago, that more of this type of character may be creeping into media, but I tend not to watch a lot of procedural type stuff. Is she kind of a stock character, or is this something maybe a little new for this show?
Well, let me ask you this. Is she sort of a loose cannon?
Yeah.
Does she have an information wall?
Yes.
And she also falls for the bad boy.
It is stock and standard, like paint by numbers. This is who this character is.
Frank Castle, I think I'm falling in love with you.
And it's not it's not necessarily a bad thing that you have one of these characters on a show like this, because you have such extreme characters on this show. You're gonna need something to root it down, you know. Like you got a guy who pretends that he's mentally disabled at the beginning of the show, and he actually is like a serial killer, but for good, you know. Like,
yeah.
Like, so when you have characters like that, you have a lady who used to be a paralegal who is now a reporter. You have, you know, I mean, it's all over the place. So you need to have something that audiences, especially mainstream audiences, can go, oh, well, I know who that character is.
Yeah, kind of like a butler who works his way up to being governor.
Well, exactly. It's like that. And which leads to the question: if Karen gets her own show, will we call that show White Benson?
I've already been calling her the White Benson. How did you know that?
I can see your thoughts and dreams.
Oh man, we're one mind and two bodies, Sean.
We're gonna make up a shirt. We're gonna make up a shirt that says White Benson and send it to Karen's people.
I like it that you even call her Karen. The True Blood Lady is what I call her.
The True Blood Lady,
but not the star. Now, when Billy Russo shows up, you know, the handsome, extremely handsome actor. First off, like I'm just offended. Actors should not be allowed to be so handsome, and spread some of that around to the regular folk. But were you guys familiar enough with the source material that his name gave everything away, or were you along for the ride here?
I did not know. I did not know his real name, and I, to the point where I didn't even know who he was supposed to be until the very end of the show.
Yeah, because as soon as they introduce him as Billy Russo, then I kind of, like, at that point, there was no mystery. Because, you know, they try to play that, like, is this a guy that Frank can trust or not? You know, because the whole idea in The Punisher is that you can trust no one. So I guess, you know, you're not going to trust anyone except maybe Madani and Micro. But, you know, there was no mystery to me because Billy Russo, and you know, maybe they could have pulled a fake out on me and had him not be who he was in the comics. But I felt like as much as they tried to misdirect that somebody else was going to be the big bad, just as soon as I heard his name, I kind of knew where that was going.
I saw him walking in, and I was just like, this man is far too good looking not to be one of the main dudes in this thing. He ain't no side hustler character. He's in on the big hits.
And
on
in
this
fact,
boy.
he was so slender and pretty that it was hard for me to believe he was actually a Special Forces Marine.
Right. Well, and that was my question: is that isn't he in the comics? Isn't he like the son of a gangster or something?
Well, let me ask you this: does his last name end in a vowel?
It does.
Does he have slick back hair?
He does.
Does he drive a nice car and wear leather?
He does.
So see, I'm good at this too, man. I'm proud of myself.
You are pretty good at it. You're pretty good at it.
You know, comic books are never known, at least until very recently, comic books were not known for their progressive treatment of ethnicity. So if you were Italian, you were either a gangster or a cop trying to break gangsters.
Hey, you could also own a pizza shop.
Or
and pay protection money.
Or you're trying to stop that, ape from throwing those barrels.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, that's true. But new evidence has shown that Mario may have been Portuguese, but don't tell anybody.
What?
But yeah, man, Billy Russo, man. I guess he could have been a boxer too that refused to take a dive. I think Italians were allowed to do that in the comics.
Are you Italian? You seem like a guy that would be disreputable and take a dive for some money.
Well, see, he takes the money, but he doesn't take the dive. That's what happened to.
You're even.
Oh no, that's what the Irish guys do. Never mind. I'm getting my comic book stereotypes crossed.
Get it right. The Italians they dive real good.
They got my ma.
Not Manucci. But yeah, Billy Russo from the Russo crime family.
I like how they and I liked all the flashbacks that they kind of did to really, give us some proper backstory and stuff like that. I thought all of that kind of stuff was handled really well in the show.
And I think some of the best part about the flashbacks is they found a way, even though the character's dead, to let us see a little more Clancy Brown, because the show can never have too much Clancy Brown.
Nope.
Here.
And, it also kind of slowly explained what's going on with this Rollins character, because Rollins is sort of a comic book type character. And, I think they suffered a little bit from maybe too many big bads, because Rollins is kind of a big bad also. And then they throw in something in the second half of or I'd say the middle portion of the season that just kind of, it's like a tangent bad guy, like a side quest before they get to the end. It almost felt like maybe this would have been okay at 9 episodes instead of 13. But what'd you think of Rollins, man? The guy with the scarred up eye.
Yeah, Agent Orange. I think he's okay. I like that character. I like that actor.
Yeah.
I like that they don't really know his name. Even after all this time, they still don't even really know who that dude was.
Yeah.
And I especially like the fact that the guy plays it that he's the hero. There's something really great about a bad guy who's like, look, I do what's necessary to protect our country.
Well, I mean, all the best bad guys are like that, right?
Oh, without a doubt. But there's usually not that subtlety in the Punisher. Usually the guy that the Punisher is up against is like Bazooka Bob.
He's the one selling 14-year-old prostitutes to get money to buy heroin so that he can sell the heroin to school kids who then take bombs and blow up the church.
I figured out a way to... I'm just doing the good stuff. I figured out a way to have a car work on human misery.
And like combustible kittens. Exactly. I've created a breed of combustible kittens.
So it was just surprising to see that in something like this,
Yeah.
And it was nice, and it's one of the reasons why I like the show so much is that, oh hey, that guy's coming back later. They still don't even know that guy's name yet, and it was, and I love, that actor is one of those character actors. You just see him in everything, and that you know him, but you can't even remember where you know him from.
Almost it's like when you can't get Jeffrey Tambor, you get this guy.
Almost.
I couldn't help but think of Tambor's character from Hellboy. But
that was before he was capital J, capital T.
that was pre-Arrested Development.
It is pre-Arrested Development, but it is post Larry Sanders Show.
Oh, okay. Good time in his life. Good time in his life. Man, I'll tell you this, the micro flashback, because we get a lot of flashbacks of the Punisher, man. And to be honest, I think we get maybe too many of the kind of key moment, too many of that moment where the agent in Kandahar gets shot. But the flashback to Micro, like telling us how Micro wound up where he is, that was a heartbreaking flashback. That one worked real well on me.
Yeah, me too. But again, this show, at least he's not in that damn raft for 3 years.
That's true, man. That's true.
But the cool part is, too, is like I like how they kind of subverted what I was originally thinking. Because when we start to see Frank's early flashbacks and everything, a guy comes into the room and kills his wife. And for us that know about Punisher, it's like, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And then we find out later, it's like, no, this is all, in his head. These are things that he's... I thought that was a really neat little twist that I was... It felt very Dark Knight, where I was just like, that's not how it happens. And I go, oh, I see what you're doing. Good.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I was trying to puzzle that out. I didn't quite get what was going on there at first.
Yeah, it was clever.
But, that's, I guess we move into getting weapons from Turk. And, this is where Turk pops up here around episode 4 or 5. And like I said, it was pretty forgettable that Turk showed up. But we do get to see Micro helping Frank out. And they start to go from this more antagonistic but tolerant relationship that they had when Frank first found where Micro was at to a more partnership here. Even though it stays an uneasy partnership until the very end, if you ask me.
Yeah, I think so too, but that's what makes it work, and one of the other things that I really like about it, about Micro and, his family and his baggage, is that his son is a prick. Like, that kid was awful.
Yeah.
And he's awful almost throughout until Frank starts throwing a football with him. But there's something great about, like, like, the kid isn't precocious. Like, the kid is just awful. And I love how bad he is, to the point where Frank even says to Micro, "Hey, your kid's awful like you are."
Yeah,
like that is a really, really great moment.
And just needs to get them together and just be like, hey, look, I'm gonna whoop up on you if you don't start acting like a human being over here. And the kid's like, oh, well, yeah, maybe he not for nothing. The kid had quite a traumatic little experience.
Well, yeah.
And also, man, it might be, this might be in the second half. I hate to break too far ahead, but there's one part where Frank's throwing football with the kid and he goes, "My man," and I had a little Aquaman flashback.
Gosh, that's right around the time. You're fine.
Yeah, but, right towards episode 4 or 5 is when Billy Russo and Agent Madani start getting familiar with each other in the biblical sense.
Mm-hmm.
Come up with a euphemism, Bruce.
Yeah, they're missing out on these euphemisms. Our listeners have actually said they miss Bruce and his wild and mystical, witticisms. What do you got?
He comforts the pain of her bandaged bosom in the last way one would imagine to do it.
What are you, a Harlequin novel?
Yeah, man. Her chowder buckets are all strapped up when they're, doing
That's
what
people wanted.
If I could steal one from Dave Letterman, those two would cave diving with Uncle Stinky.
Oh, man, that's even better than Burgess Meredith. I like it.
You had to say it a bit more of a gravel, but it works. Here's the thing. This show, for a show that has a lot of getting down in it, they really made sure to have absolutely, zero naughty bits, and everything is placed just so.
Yeah, man.
It is insane how graphic the sex is without seeing any nudity.
Right?
That has got to be record setting.
It's a little weird.
I haven't seen such sophisticated use of an ace bandage since I watched Boys Don't Cry back in like 99 or whenever that came out.
I didn't see the end of that movie. How's that turn out?
It's a happy ending.
A bit different.
No, it's not a happy ending, folks. I'm trying to yank Sean's chain.
It's not. It's Sun and Roses, that one did.
And just so you know, everybody, that was a meatball. I just set Bruce up with a meatball.
It goes about how you'd expect in Nebraska.
Well, there you go. A Nebraska fan, send your the laundryroombruce@gmail.com.
Go Huskers.
Now let's talk for a minute about this, because this seems to be something that I think a lot of I think there's a lot of split stuff here from that I've seen from critics and whatnot. Some people are saying it's a great program. Others are saying this show missed the mark on having to say something new or something at all, rather, about violence. And I think that this show is spectacular in that fashion, in that it says so much. And anyone who doesn't see what this show is saying, I think, is out of their mind.
Now, here's where I come down on that, Adam. I think this show acknowledges that people are doing stuff and that stuff is happening, but it works very hard not to take a position on it.
I think it just shows you what's there. And here's the thing for me is that the show, it is super violent. Now, I like violent programs, violent movies and stuff like that. I enjoy watching a John Woo movie, right? People are getting shot up everywhere. It's a blast. It's fun, right? Violence can be fun when done in the right way. There's no fun to this violence in my book. I think this is shown very
right. I'll agree with you there. Maybe that's part of my complaint that I didn't realize is I like my more frivolity in my mass murdering.
Right. This is very realistic. Things happen. It is violent. It is gory, and they show things how they would be, more or less, and it puts it in this reality that, hey man, Frank Castle is not a good guy. Frank Castle is a very damaged individual who has a lot of problems. And I don't think that they shy away from that. And I'm racking my brain with these people that just don't understand what this show is actually saying, or that it truly is actually saying something. I think it says a lot about how we treat veterans and how we, treat mental disability and things like that for these guys that have gone off and seen such, things that we cannot imagine and come back and very often do get treated horribly. And
but I think, though, that to me, I kind of juxtapose this in my mind with Jessica Jones. And Jessica Jones, I felt, made a pretty strong statement about sort of the post-traumatic experience of somebody from a terribly abusive relationship and shared something and made a statement about it. I feel like here they only acknowledged it on the most superficial level and then used it as a plot device. I think that you could tell how much more personally the showrunner on Jessica Jones felt about her topic than the showrunner on this one felt about this show's topic.
Because I think this, to me, is a little less black and white than that. Because the Punisher, while being let's be honest with ourselves, he's a horrific, psychopathic murderer. That's what he does. Now, he does what he does for a good reason, and if he did not do those things, more evil would come of it. Does that make what he did right? How did he get to this point in the first place? And I think it is, as far as from a societal standpoint, it's so wide open as to, we really don't know. We really don't know, sometimes where a particular line is or how to solve a particular problem, because frankly, there may not be a real good answer just yet.
I think that this show makes a complete stand on violence. I think that this show is completely pro-violence because every law enforcement officer on the show takes Frank's side. Every single one of them. I mean, even our main character by the end is like, get out of here, Frank yelled so-and-so. They're not even hiding it. I don't think that they're trying to mask that violence is bad. I think that they're saying that there is a need for violence in certain cases, and this is why.
And I think that I just think that they're suggesting that there's something to talk about, but not wanting to talk about it, which makes me wonder if they weren't making a mistake to even draw my attention to it in the first place. Like, they have these support group meetings that look very much like an AA meeting or something.
Yeah.
Or people dealing with adjusting to life after getting out of the military. Curtis, who I think is a great character, the way that he's given here, he's one of the characters that I really liked. Everything about him, the fact that his violent past has made him a pacifist to a fault. I like that kind of character. Mm-hmm. I like his positivity, even with his prosthetic and everything. I even like the actors. I like the way he says insurance instead of insurance. Like, I like the guy. But they have this meeting suggesting that there's a place for healing for the folks who've been damaged, by their experience with the military. And I think that by the end of this, that meeting maybe needs to help Frank deal with his issues, and it doesn't. I think something positive needs to come from those meetings. I think some reason, that's like Chekhov's support group that doesn't pay off. The only thing it does is it introduces us to at least one character suffering from PTSD that probably paints more negative stereotypes of a veteran who's struggling to readjust than it does to help any kind of healing.
Not only that, but the self-help group itself doesn't help a single person. The one person that it was supposed to be helping, it actually made worse by introducing the big fat guy who wasn't actually in Vietnam.
And exactly, man, exactly. And then I hate to jump too much into the second season, but not only does the show offer sort of a metaphorical debate on Second Amendment issues, but they have a literal debate on Second Amendment issues as this show progresses, where they take absolutely no stand because they don't want to alienate half their audience. But I think what happens is each half thinks that they're taking the other half's position by not clearly taking a position. I think they may risk alienating all their audience.
But I think that's reality, though. I see that as very much a reality sort of thing.
And you might think of that as reality, but just turn on anything where people from different sides of the aisle are debating something and they don't treat each other with any kind of respect or any kind of modicum of decency like they have in this show.
Oh no, I'll grant you that.
You don't bring that debate to your show unless you've got an angle to play on it, because you bring it in and just leave that as a hanging thread, and everybody's going to think you're taking the other team's side. You know what I'm saying? Like, no matter where you come down on it, you're looking at it because they didn't come out and support what you think, that they must be supporting what the other team thinks.
Well, see, that's what I like about it, though, because here's the thing, because that's what I've seen in articles written by people. There's some people that say, hey, you said nothing on violence and guns and gun legislation and things of that nature, and I've heard others saying, hey, man, You totally, told those, left-wing, jokers to go ahead and we can do whatever we want with our guns. So there are two sides that think completely different things about this. And I think that's where, to me, it's like if both sides think you're evil, you're doing something right.
Oh, so that's why you approach life the way you do, Adam.
Yeah. Darn straight.
As long as you're pissing everyone off, you're okay by it.
Ding, ding, ding. Chicken dinner on that one, my friends.
Hey, it worked out for Mel Gibson in the end.
Hey, look, he's got his second career coming on there,
Daddy's Home 2, a great movie.
It is. I enjoyed it quite a lot. Check out a review over at the Film Fund. Go check it out, man. Just dropping plugs. You know how it is. Speaking of dropping things, we need to drop our... Wait a minute. That doesn't work well. How does this...
You need to drop your pants and tell us how this connects to Sylvester Stallone.
Drop your cellular telephone on the ground, pray that the screen doesn't crack, and listen to how this here program relates to our good friend Sylvester Stallone.
Why, thank you, Adam. I have a prepared statement.
Mm-hmm.
Remember when the Stallone connection each week was Get Carter?
Yes.
It seemed like there was a tear in the space-time continuum, and everything ended up relating back to Stallone's 2000 movie that no one anywhere has ever seen ever. Well, it turns out we might have a new one, because this week's Stallone connection is the same exact one as last week's, 2008's Rambo. A movie we never referenced before last week now gets another name check thanks to the talents of Paul Schultz, who plays the role of Agent Orange in Netflix The Punisher. Now, Paul Schultz is one of those guys who's been around Hollywood for a very long time. His first job being a movie from 1989 called The Unbelievable Truth. It looks like something that might be a softcore porn movie, but I'm totally unwilling to do the legwork on a movie where John Robert Burke gets second billing. If you don't recognize that name, then you are clearly not a fan of the guy who played RoboCop in RoboCop 3. And you know what? Good for you. No one should be a fan of that movie. But let's get back to Paul Schultz. He's in a ton of movies with names like Alien Fury, Countdown to Invasion, and Strong Medicine. But he also had a foot in some good projects like Spike Lee's criminally underrated Clockers and Panic Room. But not done by Spike Lee, by the way, Panic Room.
That's
But it's a good movie.
Yeah.
But it's a good movie. Anyway, in case anyone had any question. Anyway, but he's probably best known to most people as the priest from The Sopranos that kept seeing if he could drill ladies and then not do anything about it. Now, for Rambo, he plays the role of Michael Bennett. And while I've never seen Rambo, I'm going to guess he did a great job in the role because the guy doesn't do bad work. He's just a solid actor doing good work. And I can't wait until we get to the point where people start knowing his name instead of just being that guy from that thing. Because I'll be honest with you, I've already forgotten the man's name. It's Paul Schultz. It's Paul Schultz. So there you have it, HMPers, this week's Stallone Connection. Now, Jigsaw and Cordite, let's review the first half of The Punisher so we can continue being awesome. Because I don't know about you guys, but I've been pretty awesome this week.
I was a big fan of him on 24, and yes, and if anyone has not seen Rambo, the last Rambo movie, do yourself a favor. It is good. You've never seen so many people get shot with 50-millimeter bullets in your entire life from a span of about 2.5 feet away. Oh my goodness,
those are big bullets.
Quite the ordeal, that flick. It's real good, and he plays kind of a jerk in it. Surprise, surprise.
What a surprise!
I know that's going to take a lot of people off track going, this seems a little weird. But here on Hero Movie Podcast, we have our own patented, that's right, I said patented, Robin rating system. If you'd like to check that out, head on down to facebook.com/Hero Movie Podcast, and it's right there at the top of the screen. While you're there, why don't you throw a like on that bad boy as well to find out, all the stuff that we're up to, man. So, Bruce, where does the first half of The Punisher on Netflix fall on the Robin rating system for you, sir?
Well, as is tradition, I'm going to hold my Robin rating until we do review the second half.
Make up a Robin that's not there. That's my point.
I'm going to rate the season as a whole. A Robin that's not there would be Robin Wright Penn or
there
whatever.
You go.
But
Robin,
anyway,
hey, that's pretty good. That's
I'll have a
good.
couple of weeks to consider it. I'll go back and watch some of it again. I think people can tell it's not doing a lot for me so far, but who knows, man? By the time we finish this off, I may have a change of heart. You never can tell.
It might swing around. Keenan, what are your expectations?
I think that this might end up being a low Tim Drake for me. I really enjoyed this show so far. Hint, hint.
I'm on the Tim Drake fan so far, and I'll be honest with you, I've only seen like 8 episodes, so I'm still missing a couple. Purposely not been watching them on account of this here program. I didn't want to be swayed. I didn't want to be swindled.
If it weren't for the fact that I know you so well, I would call you a consummate professional.
But stronger heads prevailed. You're smart in that direction. So we'll talk about this come the beginning of the year because we have so much planned, everybody. So much planned for this thing. We are already through the end of the year. But remember when at the early part of the show I was talking about the people that go down to patreon.com/HMP? You know those fine folks? They actually get to vote on a movie that we watch, and they have voted. And let's look at the old tally. Well, let's look at which ones they had to choose from. We had The Mask, Barbed Wire, From Hell, and Surrogates. Well, it was an interesting choice here. Let's tally them up.
Smoking!
That's right, everybody. We're going to be reviewing Jim Carrey's The Mask.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Cameron Diaz is in that one.
Cameron Diaz was pretty good in that one, right?
If people think that I'm harsh on The Crow, oh, no.
Well, man, maybe we've got a new tradition. There's another Mask movie out there, Sean.
Hey, who knows? Who knows? But, an overwhelming majority, actually, on The Mask. More than double the votes of the next two. Barbed Wire and From Hell were tied up, and this one got double than both those. So, yeah, it was a yowza, man.
The comic book connection is going to be a lot of fun because there's some noteworthy differences between the two that I think I'll enjoy discussing.
Where's Walter?
So we will be talking about that next week. And if you would like to get on more of the good, clean fun that is patreon.com/HMP, we're coming up on the beginning of the month. That's when it'd be best if you go down there and get on board because we got some new stuff for you, and including a little special thing I have designed, wishing you guys a Merry Christmas. You got to be able to go down to patreon.com/HMP to check that out. And we'll get you more and more stuff, including the pre- and post shows. In the meantime, Bruce, where can we find more of your work on the internet, sir?
I'm always telling folks about Nerdspawn Genesis, the latest book that features 3 lovable comic book nerds and diehard podcasters that are fighting the forces of evil with the assistance of Little Steel in order to protect the sanctity of John Malkovich's oatmeal. Amen. Really, that's the story. It has it all. $2.99 for the ebook on Kindle. It's also enrolled in Kindle Unlimited, so subscribers can read for free. And $7.99 for the paperback. Check it out. Do yourself a favor. It's good fun.
You cannot go wrong. And let me tell you, it is fun reading that book for me specifically because there's so many like little tiny one-liners and little things that will mean absolutely nothing to everybody else, but I just go, oh, that is a direct reference to my life, and he knows that. It's just like, Adam references his car being noisy. That doesn't mean anything to you people as the readers, but I go, hey, my car is noisy. That's right.
I've ridden in said car.
That's how he knows. So it makes a whole heck of a lot of sense. Keenan, anything interesting happened in your life? Just same old ho-hum?
So same old ho-hum. I just wrote a new book.
Oh,
awesome.
It's called Dianetics 2: Where We Went Wrong. You can find that through all the things that Bruce just said about his book. And you can reach me on Twitter at Hero Movie Sean.
And, of course, my other show, The Film Find, at thefilmfind.com. New release reviews every single week. We've got so many big things coming up on the pipe here because, man, oh, man, this week was lousy with tons and tons of movies to go watch. And we watched a good chunk of them, so go check that out. Nerd Talk Now, nerdtalknow.com. You guys know all the drill and everything, man. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for joining us over at patreon.com/HMP and helping this train keep a rolling along. Until next week when we review The Mask, for Sean Keenan, Bruce Leslie, I'm Adam Portrais. Stay super, everybody.
Bye, Marty and Edie.